This is what we hope to accomplish. The early learning piece is to have all kids ready to learn and remain on track moving into early elementary K through 3. Just today we announced an application for $500 million for Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge Grant. The grant is in conjunction with the Health and Human Services Department, taking advantage of their experience with Head Start programs and early learning programs across the country. But the idea is to prepare kids and the systems that prepare them to come into kindergarten better prepared. This may strike some of you as odd, but I was talking to a group of teachers once, and the kindergarten teacher raised her hand and said, "I have the most difficult job in K-12 because I don't know who's coming into my class. My first grade teacher knows who I'm sending to them, and they can get on me because I didn't prepare so-and-so to meet this standard, or this person didn't come ready to take on first grade work." But a kindergarten teacher is getting kids from all backgrounds, some that go to a private daycare program, some that go to a Head Start program, some that come directly from home. So there is no commonality. And he or she has to make sense out of that collection of background to provide those kids a chance to hit the ground running and take advantage of all that kindergarten class has to offer. It sounds almost fundamental. Yet we know, right here in Kentucky, as strong as you are in all the academic pursuits, that there is inequality, inequity is a better word, in the provision of early learning programs. And what this $500 million is intended to do is provide the resources for a state to look at how that system should be more aligned with where you're going with K-12 and higher ed. It's all about creating this deliberate connection from early learning into elementary, secondary, and post-secondary. How you do that is up to you. We value teachers. We want to treat teachers like the professionals they are. Recognize that not all teachers are created equal. We want to shift the focus from the inputs in the system to the outcomes. We want to strengthen teacher and leader preparation. Believe it or not, if you watch the $6 Million Man, we have the technology. We can identify, based on how well a teacher performs his or her work, not where they went wrong, but where their teacher education program went wrong. I hear from superintendents, maybe not from any in this room yet, but from superintendents all the time, that they hire teachers from colleges of education for jobs that don't exist anymore. They may not be fluent in technology. They may not be prepared for the diversity and the cultural differences in the classroom. They may not be prepared for either the parent assertiveness or the parent's malaise. That those environmental challenges that are such a part of whether or not a kid succeeds or not is not part of pedagogy. It's not part of methodology. How we make certain that teachers come to the classroom not just with the content knowledge, but the context knowledge as well. But what they're walking into is a diverse group of students who come from many different backgrounds, many different cultures. You may have a kid whose parents just lost their job and lost their home, and he's not willing to learn, not because he doesn't want to, but because he can't. The most difficult challenge we face is the fourth one, equitable distribution of our effective teachers and leaders. That 25 to 27% dropout rate I talked about earlier, we know where they come from. We know where the 5,000 high schools are that have the highest dropout rate in the country. Half of them are inner city. Of that remaining half are suburban schools, the other half are rural schools. So there is no part of the country that is exempt from having challenges supporting graduation. One strategy that's been talked about is if we can't move our most challenging kids to our best high schools, how about moving our best teachers to the schools where they can do the most good? Well, that doesn't work so well because there are a lot of other inherent issues in there that can't be overcome with the differential pay increase. And we're still struggling with how we make certain that all kids have access to the best teachers, regardless of what zip code their parents chose to live in. That, again, is a hallmark of our education system, the equity of access. And the challenges that brings are real. But the students are still in need of what we offer. And the students are still in need of the best that we can provide. Back to the blueprint. So if we want college and career-ready students, this is what we hope, this is what we've presented to Congress as a way to address what we hope will be some of the key issues. First, let's look on the left side, some of the things we've experienced with No Child Left Behind. 12-year-old statute. I was there when it was signed into law, and there was great expectation that this would really begin to put effort and focus on education reform. First year out of the box, we said to states, you have to establish a bar of performance. Every state did it. Until the first student results began to come in. And then in some states, we had an interesting dilemma. As the results came in, you had the bar here and the performance here. States had a choice. They could either continue the path of raising the students' achievement and deal with that gap, or they could lower the standards to better accommodate where the students' performance lie. You can guess what states mostly chose to do. They lowered the standards. What we want to do is raise the bar, but making it a meaningful raising the bar, where instead of having, in No Child Left Behind, what we had was 50 different objectives, 50 different goals, and one measurement template. The three most dreaded words in our system these days are adequate yearly progress. If you make it, your school can breathe easy for another year. If you don't make it, it's like getting the scarlet letter, even if it is because one student in one high school, one day, chose not to show up. Was that what was intended? No. Is that how it turned out? Yes. So by having 50 different goals, all measured the same way, we diluted the principal value of education in the United States, and that's state and local control. So by our raising the bar and focusing on college and career readiness, outcome rather than process, it focuses the attention on what we at the local level, or you at the local level, do best. Some would suggest that No Child Left Behind was too prescriptive. I've never met anybody that has disagreed with that. It's deeply measured. For the time at which it was implemented, maybe it needed to be. It was kind of a course correction away from something that was very subjective to something that was arguably objective, not objectionable. Maybe it became that. What we want to do is recognize that there are three categories of schools in this country. Those that will do well if you put them out on a Fern Valley Road, and they'll do well no matter what. It's in the DNA of that school. It's in the DNA of that system. And then there are schools, the vast majority are doing fine. We want to focus our attention on those schools that are at the bottom, that have been historically low performing, not because the system has said, we give up. And they're on the path to getting the sense that education just doesn't matter. I'm just counting my time until I can turn 16 and get out of here. So there are some states that are raising the age with which you have to stay in school. I'll leave it up to each state to decide whether that's the proper public policy or not. We'd rather operate more on the front end and make it less interesting for kids to leave than easier or harder for them to leave once they get older. That's No Child Left Behind is too punitive. The dreaded AYP designation, we want to recognize success. But No Child Left Behind, it's nice try. Ooh, you almost made it. We want to recognize the efforts of teachers to make that investment matter, so that they're willing to put the effort into that growth. And it's not going to be held against them because the kid did not suddenly, through some miracle, go from second grade reading to on grade level reading. And for many of the kids that are most challenged in our system, that growth has to be incremental and progressive for it to be successful. Narrowed the curriculum. Schools have made many different choices about what is sacrificed to focus attention on what was being measured by us. One thing we'll continue about No Child Left Behind is focusing on gaps and inequity. Before No Child Left Behind was enacted, it was very common to go to school and say, you know, we're doing fine. Everything's going great. 80% of our kids are doing really well. We have that troublesome 20%, but you know, every school has that troublesome 20%. And when we disaggregate the data and look at the school not as a whole, but on the sum of its parts, we found that those kids in that 20% that weren't getting it anywhere. So as a nation, not as a federal voice, but as a nation, is it not important for us to make certain that those kids succeed as well? So that's our blueprint.